YouTube, welcome to channel Anna Bella, and today I'm going to be doing His Dark Materials, the BBC and HBO series, episode 3, Spies. Finally, it's all out in the open, and in fact it's explained far more quickly, and the whole relationship thing, that Mrs. Coulter was a married woman who had an affair with Lord Asriel. Lyra was the product of this affair. They couldn't raise her. Her husband challenged Lord Asriel because he defiled her property, i.e. his wife, Mrs. Coulter, who is still referred to throughout all 3 of these books as Mrs. Coulter. She's always sort of, her first husband's claim on her is never sort of rubbed away. Lord Asriel defeats him and then takes the baby, because that is, unfortunately, in this world, still classed as his property, not the woman's property, which is going back to ye ancient English law, where basically a man, when he married, his wife was considered part of his property, and any children that she had were considered his. It's also very linked to Roman Britain as well, also Edwardian and Georgian and Victorian and so on and so forth. Very up until quite recently, that was changed to when a woman had a child, she was the sole legal guardian of that child, unless she was married, and 2, her partner, the father, was on the birth certificate, and that still stands today. So if a woman has a baby, it's automatically, she's the legal parent. The father has to put his name on the birth certificate, even if he's married. If he's married, he gets paternity straight away. If he's not, but his name is on that birth certificate, then he is the father. Just clarifying English law for you, which kind of explains what crackled off. So Lord Asriel got Lyra and then took her to safety during the Great Flood. Obviously, there's more information on that if you are reading book 1, the Book of the Dust, the first book in the Book of the Dust trilogy, Les Belles Sauvages, which is not part of His Dark Materials. It's actually the first book of the Book of the Dust is a prequel, so it should kind of go here, as does another book that Philip Pullman wrote called Lyra's Oxford, which should go here. So you've got Book of the Dust, then Lyra's Oxford, then these 3, and then book 2 of the Book of the Dust, which is The Secret Commonwealth. Please do not let anybody under the age of 12 have access to the Book of the Dust trilogy, because it goes into areas that are far, let's just say that sexuality and sexual assault, Philip Pullman doesn't shy away from them in those 2 books. So please be aware that Philip Pullman is a writer that does push the envelope. These are not children's books. These are young adult books. I am making that very clear. So back to Ma Costa, who basically fills Lyra in on her personal history, because Ma Costa was her nurse whilst she was at Jordan College. And by nurse, I mean that she was breastfeeding Lyra basically while she was an infant. So it kind of explains the relationship Lyra has with Mrs. Coulter. But also, Ma Costa is very sincere when she says about those spy things that you shouldn't get rid of it, you should keep it, because it just shows how much your mother is desperate for you. She's going about it in the completely wrong way and everything, but she does love and care for you, Lyra, which I thought was an important point, and I was pleased that Ma Costa actually made that point to her, because Lyra is essentially a feral child for all wants and purposes, and for all the scholars at Oxford, they did not meet her welfare needs. She was fed, but her emotional needs were not met properly, which is why you then have this sort of screaming thing. It's like, people are lying to me. And this is what happens with older children. They start to question their environment. She's had so many different things. Roger needs to be found. Billy Costa needs to be found. And the Egyptians are actually meeting the emotional welfare need that so far her incompetent father has failed to do, and Mrs. Coulter. Mrs. Coulter, through reasons of guilt and shame, can't. And I find it very interesting, the fact that when she goes into Lyra's room that's all silks and satins, note that she dresses Lyra in silks and satins and good clothes, Mrs. Coulter has sacrificed her own wants and needs for her material wealth and comfort and security, hence everything. And it kind of explains the silent gold monkey. I really love the gold monkey. yeah, if I had a demon, I would probably like a little tamarin monkey. It could like sit there and do things with its tail, like get me food items. Obviously, it would get food items for itself as well, but I'd expect to, you know, feed and feed. I like it's this, got to feed the soul and you've got to feed the physical body. Hey, what can I say? It can get me the little canapes. See, that is how I would use a demon, as a food getter. Yay. Anyway, enough of my love of food. Back to this episode. So she's not sure who's telling the truth. There's clearly huge history gaps, which Ma Costa fills in. I'm loving the fact that we get some of subtle knife references. We even see a picture of a main character from this book, good old Will. For those of you that have read these, oh boy, the amount of foreshadowing. Poor Mrs. Coulter, the fact that whenever she sees a cliff, she wants to jump off it. That could be seen as a huge foreshadowing of certain event that happens later on. And the fact that the Egyptian boy says to her, I'm not going to betray my family, before also diving off, is hugely, I was like, can we have anything else flashing in neon about what her eventual fate? Can we do that? Are we gonna, I was like, subtlety, this is not. But I kind of like that it explained that choice, because that happens, the eventual choice she makes. Yeah, I've probably said too much. But hey ho, I mean, it was there, neon bloody letters. Excuse the thing. As I said, this is not a children's book. Nasty things are about to happen. Those plans are positively torturous at the station in the north. You think that's bad? Oh boy. Basically, the one character that I would really enjoy being is Pan in these books. Anybody else is just not going to come out well. And if you're rooting for Roger, it ain't going to go well. And if you're rooting for Billy Costa, oh, that's just, I'm just going to go and hide. Yeah, it's dark, guys. The road we are walking on is terrible. And if this is a book about going from childhood to adulthood, he's missed out periods. But then again, Philip Pullman is an Oxford Don. He wouldn't know about periods. Lyra is big enough that she would be having periods. They should have done a whole Miss Coulter thing, you know, with the period thing. Even if it's just a thingy thing, they should have done it, because then it would have made sense. But that's just me. But it's really, really difficult. I would really like a mainstream young adult program to handle periods. Why can't they make Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume? That would be an awesome book to actually make. And it would actually confront the one thing that they have never shown: women's bleeding or menstruation. They show people going to the loo now in films and TV shows, but they never talk about this issue. You never have the beach scene where the girl says, I'm sorry, I can't have sex or do anything like that because I'm on my period. It's usually I have a headache. You know, but that's just me going off on one. And I think very soon we should have a TV series of Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, because that would be awesome. It's an awesome book, by the way, as are these. So I'm loving the fact that we are getting some of this as well as this, because it's setting it up nicely for the next bit. We apparently are getting 2 seasons of this series, purely because the age of the actress, she's actually 14 and they want to get it all. I was initially thinking they were only going to do Northern Lights / the Golden Compass, but it looks like they're going to do everything in His Dark Materials, which means The Subtle Knife will get done, and Amber Spyglass. Possibly we may get book 1, The Book of the Dust, Les Belles Savages, and book 2, The Secret Commonwealth. Obviously the actress who plays Lyra will be 21 in book 2 of Book of the Dust, and she'll be a baby in book 1 of the Book of the Dust. So but I don't think that's going to happen. It depends what happens in book 3. After hearing reviews of the Book of the Dust, I'm not happy. But I really enjoyed Spies. I'm liking the fact that we're really enjoying these characters. It's not rushed. Every episode is encompassing. So this episode we really learned about Egyptian culture. We learned in episode 1 we got Lyra's Jordan, and we learned about Lord Asriel. Episode 3 we learned about the episode 2 we learned about the Magisterium and Mrs. Coulter's world and that relationship. I felt so sorry for that journalist Butterfly, by the way, but I think I'm liking that in episode 3 we learned about the Egyptian culture a little bit more. You got them set up as a character. I'm hoping in episode 4 we will go and see the witches and we will learn more about them. Then the armoured bears, then the aeronauts. There's loads to come. This book is the most child-friendly of them all, even though the ending is not child-friendly. It is the most child-friendly one. These two take us to whole new levels and different places, and it is a complex young person's relationship that Lyra has with Will. It isn't a straightforward drive either. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like, comment and subscribe. Do check out His Dark Materials, the BBC HBO series. It is brilliant. It's much better than the film that they did. The film did suffer backlash because Philip Pullman is an atheist, but he's an arrogant atheist, and that's one of his problems. But that being said, his books are brilliant, and they allow us to consider things about organised religion that we haven't considered for some time, and it is worth considering, because it's interesting to note that had the Magisterium not been there, Mrs. Coulter would have left her husband, shacked up with Lord Asriel, and they would have been able to raise their daughter together as a family, which is clearly something Mrs. Coulter wanted to do. Whether or not her and her husband couldn't do that is unknown. We don't know the ins and outs of it, but I assume that that is what would have happened had the Magisterium not been there. Because remember that Lyra as a baby was placed in a convent, and her father, Lord Asriel, had to overrule that decision and place her at his college, which is interesting to say the least. Please like, comment and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts about how this series is going. Thank you so much for the support.